Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for choosing Across the Fence. I'm Will Michael. And as always, on the fourth Wednesday of the month, I'm joined by conservation biologist Mark LaBarr from Audubon, Vermont. Mark, always great to see you, and especially with springtime finally coming around.
Yeah, so spring is here, and of course that means lots of things. A good friend of mine suggested I put on a little bright spring attire to kind of encourage spring to come a little faster. And of course spring is a great time because the birds start coming back.
Well, and in fact, I asked you earlier in the week, a couple of weeks ago, I had like this eruption, I guess is how I'd call it, of red-winged blackbirds and grackles.
Yeah.
It surprised me. And
yeah.
They came in for a day, they were gone.
So the red-winged blackbirds and the grackles, you know, we often think of robins as being the harbinger of spring, but oftentimes for a lot of people it's the sound of the red-winged blackbird, an icterid, and they come back, and that, if I remember correctly, they stayed for a little bit and then moved on.
Gone.
So these are birds that are probably moving through the beginning of the migration push. We've got turkey vultures coming out. People are starting to see birds. This is a good time to remind folks the bears are also coming out. So bring in your feeders to make sure that you don't get that human-bear reaction.
Yep. And clean things up, get ready for next feeding season.
Get ready for spring. And
so springtime is also the theme of today, as we've already sort of indicated, but it's also the Spring Bobolink Project. Now this is something that's been around. Some viewers may be familiar with it, but that is our theme for today, the Bobolink Project. So
Bobolinks, another icterid, so in the same family as the blackbirds, and this is a grassland bird, and there's a project out there which looks to protect bobolinks, basically help folks that hay their fields, manage their fields so that bobolinks are successful in getting their young off.
So you're answering that question, why is it important this time of year to protect them? And it's because they're these nesting birds in the fields, and if we're going to go out and mow or do things like that, we're going to disrupt their habitat and their family.
Correct. As farmers right now, this time of year, are planning for their season, the Bobolink Project raises money from the general public and allows those farmers to plan and to hopefully manage their fields in a way that enhances habitat for bobolinks and other grassland birds.
So give us a bit of a rundown here. We're seeing, again, the bobolink.org is the website.
Right.
But in order to identify the birds, you've brought along some other helpers here.
So the bobolink, it's a great bird. It is, I call it the R2D2 bird because it hovers over hay fields and makes a bubbly kind of sound. This is a male with that classic kind of bobolink plumage with the white on the back of the head. The female, much different in the same way that blackbird females look very different from their males, and you can see the female is much more drab, streaky, matches the habitat that she's in when she's nesting. So again, male being pretty, displays, he's right out there, he's singing away. Female more camouflaged and tucked for, designed for nesting. So
is there a specific type of grass or field? Can we make judgments or say categorically they like this over something else? So
bobolinks traditionally like your classic hayfield. As we drive around the Vermont countryside, and you can see here, this is a field that's predominantly grass. Some of the other grassland birds like a little different, but this is a classic bobolink field, and one would expect to have that. So it has both hay grasses, but some other forbs in there as well. You'll often find some clover, various different things. It has to be spaced. Some grasses are a little too tight. So this is another good example of a habitat that a bobolink might use. It's this kind of habitat, which of course is perfect for farmers and hay, and that's where both the conflict comes in, as well as our opportunity to help protect them.
And let's touch on that a little bit more before we get going. This is, again, an opportunity where farmers agree to delay, and there is funding that does help the farmer sort of recover from that loss of a hay crop.
Correctly. So by recruiting funding through the general public and various other sources, there becomes a bank of funds that as farmers enroll in the program, and there's a selection process in order to keep the value about right. that then the farmers sign a contract, and for their management, they get some financial reward or payback to cover some of their losses if they're missing the second cut, which is often the case.
And the funding comes from conservation-minded people who are interested in supporting agriculture, and another A, it's not A and B, it's two A's. It's protecting the birds and it's supporting our agriculture.
Correct. So, the birds wouldn't be here without the fields that we have and our current agricultural system. Primarily in the Champlain Valley and the Connecticut River Valley, where you find most of the larger grasslands, but throughout Vermont. And so it's really important that that agricultural practice continues in order to support these birds.
All right, you showed us a couple of different examples of fields. So we know that. Do they tend to be in the middle of a field, on the edge of the field?
They do tend to nest in the middle, but they'll nest all around. They nest right on the ground. So a bobolink nest is, and again, part of that, the reason the female is covered up and has that camouflage, she blends right in with the nest on the bottom. And because of that, you can see where right in the middle of the field, the breeding season, a haying practice might disrupt this nesting. So you can see these tiny little guys and gals tucked into the nest. The male may have a number of females and within a field, but they tend to be concentrated in the center of the field. This is what a young bird looks like when it gets to the point of fledging. Oftentimes, once they leave the nest, it might take them a little bit of time before they actually are able to successfully fly and move around, and that's the goal that we're shooting for, that once that happens, then the farmers can come in and get potentially a third or a fourth cut of hay in the field season.
Are there other birds other than bobolinks that benefit from this approach and this program? Yeah,
sure. There's a whole suite of grassland birds, birds that are focused on that they need this habitat in order to breed. One of the ones that's been declining recently, even more so than the bobolinks, is the eastern meadowlark. And
okay, that's right there on the screen.
That's right, and this is a bird that actually is being considered for being listed as threatened. A couple more species that depend on it are the savanna sparrow. So you often see the savanna sparrow, that little bit of yellow right behind the bill, out there singing in with the bobolinks. And then a more rare species, a threatened species in the state, the grasshopper sparrow. Now, unlike the hayfields we looked at, this bird likes much more patchy hayfields. And so we only find that in certain locations around the state.
Mark, all these species, various birds, these gorgeous birds that we're seeing, these are all migrating in here now. These are not birds that overwintered here.
No, and the bobolink goes all the way down to central South America. It makes a huge migration and comes all the way back. The other two birds are more short distance migrants, birds that you may find in the southern U.S.
Yep.
But the bobolink has really, they've done some studies that have shown it travels great distances to get back to the hayfields that it breeds in.
Now, within reason, some of the birds you've been showing us seem to me to be roughly the same size. Is that true? So are there any bigger birds that benefit, or bigger birds that are beginning to migrate this time of year?
So, two species that I think of that are what we call obligates to grasslands and take advantage of them, sometimes nesting in them. One is the northern harrier, or marsh hawk. This is often a bird, that white tail rump will be seen, flying over grasslands in order to feed. The other one is the American kestrel. Now, this doesn't nest in the grasslands, but nests in cavities, but it also often sitting up on power lines. It'll go out and hunt out over these fields. So the fields become a crucial part of their whole cycle as they're here in Vermont.
Okay. And just so that I understand, those last two examples, the harrier and the kestrel, are they part of the bobolink project?
Indirectly. So by the bobolink is kind of the key species that we focus on that brings attention to the project, but all of these other birds benefit from the work that is done through the project.
There's some history to this, and again, I think some of our viewers have contributed in the past, or they may be aware of it, others who don't. So give us a little bit of some of the success story that goes with the bobolink project.
So it originally started up at UVM with Dr. Alan Strong doing some research showing how this economic model could work. And over the past 3 or 4 years, the project has really grown. Right now it's being administered by Mass Audubon, so it's a regional thing, but you can see the number of acres that has consistently increases over the past 4 years.
Absolutely.
And
wow.
a lot of that is due not only to this economic model, but more people contributing to this project, not only here in Vermont, but across New England. So we partner with Massachusetts Audubon, Mass Audubon, and New Hampshire Audubon, trying to step up what started here in Vermont and make it a regional project.
And one of the things I just love about this particular project is that it is not only helping our natural environment, but it's also helping our human environment. It's helping our farmers.
Yeah, I mean, the iconic hay fields that are out there that people see and drive around and think of Vermont are important, obviously, for our agriculture. Traditionally that married a little bit easier when farmers cut a little bit later, just as part of their normal thing. Now with some more intensive cutting, the Bobolink project really kind of tries to continue that marriage between agricultural, these hay fields, and the birds that depend on it.
So less than a minute left. Can you tell people how they can help support the Bobolink project?
Yeah, so the best way to do is go online, www.bobolinkproject.org or Google Bobolink, and it'll bring you right to the web page. It'll explain the entire project for you, and of course there's a donation button. Right now is a great time because we're getting close to when they need to make their decision on who gets the money. So sign up and support Bobolinks.
Well, let me also add that if you have a bird-related question, you can please contact Mark. You can write to him on the screen, or probably even easier to use his email, mlabarr@audubon.org. Send Mark your questions, and as always, he'll try to find the answers on an upcoming edition of Bird Notes. Always great to see you.
Always great to
Thanks
be here.
for coming in.
Yeah, thank you.
That is our program for today. We know you have choices, so thanks for choosing us. I'm Will Michael, inviting you to join us back here each weekday afternoon for another visit Across the Fence.